What happens when a bulldozed driveway sparks an unexpected uprising against the rules of conformity? Join me as I turn chaos into courage, one colorful protest at a time. The moment I read the HOA's delightful notification, essentially, "Hello, Alex, your driveway has been bulldozed." Surprise! I nearly spit out my pina colada. I envisioned my driveway being mercilessly ground to dust by some angst-ridden bulldozer operator who must have been joyfully cackling at my misfortune while ripping apart the very fabric of my suburban identity. Seriously, who needs villains in movies when I had Karen Whitmore, president of the HOA, orchestrating this melodrama from her meticulously manicured throne? Now I'm left to ponder, how had I become the unwitting star of this tragicomic reality show? The HOA considered my absence a suitable justification for demolishing the only route to my home, while I was sipping tropical drinks and pretending my life wasn't embroiled in chaos. Simply put, the audacity of these neighborhood watch warriors shattered any notion of restful respite. I turned the cruise ship around in my mind and envisioned my fellow passengers. A couple blithely discussing renovations on their second beach house, and a family whose biggest dilemma was where to procure more sunscreen. Meanwhile, here I was, contemplating how I'd explain to my friends that my driveway now resembled an abandoned Jurassic Park set. Would they laugh? Cry? Recommend I invest in a good telephoto lens to catch the HOA and their bulldozer in action? The possibilities swirled about like tropical breezes on deck, and the more I indulged in those thoughts, the more I realized this was not just a battle for my driveway, but a full-fledged war for my dignity. Moments later, with a heaping dose of caffeinated indignation, I stormed back to my cabin. Channeling my inner Mary Poppins, I envisioned striding into the HOA office and singing "Spoonful of Sugar," while sprinkling some serious sarcasm on their meticulously organized files. But the reality of the situation played out more like The Office, with me as Michael Scott, blissfully unaware of what was about to spiral into absolute absurdity. Luckily, I had my trusty sidekick Devon, who I could count on to add just the right amount of snark and distraction to keep my blood pressure in check. For now, though, I could envision showing up at Karen's office, waving my arms like some Houston-based Broadway diva, and belting out, "You think you can bulldoze my driveway? Not on my watch." Back on the cruise ship, I adjusted my oversized sunglasses and looked out at the glimmering ocean. Still infuriated, I mentally crafted a plan of biblical proportions. I'd need backup, certainly better than my current audience of bemused cruisegoers. Hence, a text to Devon was in order. "The HOA has declared war. Meet me at the docks of absurdity, with plenty of popcorn and a camera. Bring your best snark." Within moments, he replied with his trademark wit, "On my way. Let's turn this HOA drama into a Netflix special. I'll be the heroic neighbor who doesn't wear ugly clothes." I chuckled, knowing that Devon had a knack for providing levity even in our most ludicrous predicaments. As our ship docked and the sound of waves crashing against the pier flooded my ears, I felt a jolt of purpose surge through me. My driveway! Oh, how swiftly the tides had turned! I refused to be merely a pawn in the HOA's ridiculous game. This would be my moment. I envisioned a protest complete with lawn signs and perhaps even a marching band, though maybe just a few tambourines and kazoo players would suffice. In my mind's eye, I saw Karen Whitmore aghast at the sheer number of residents rallying behind me, their own driveways intact but their sense of justice overheated. Imagine the spectacle as I campaigned for my driveway back, while simultaneously launching an impromptu rally. Each protester dressed in floral sundresses and colorful flip-flops, cheering for suburban freedoms. Suddenly, an idea as bright as the morning sun struck me. Rather than despair at my bulldozed driveway, why not transform my perceived destruction into an avant-garde art installation? I could title it "The Illusion of Ownership," an irrefutable commentary on the ridiculousness of neighborly entitlement and misplaced authority. Let the HOA call the police. I'd explain how my new driveway would serve as an avant-garde expression of decorum's ruthless facade. Surely I could outwit a dozen Karen Whitmores and turn bureaucratic absurdity into community wisdom. My heart surged with revolutionary ideas as I plotted each step. This time it was time to gather the troops and prepare for the showdown. Can you imagine how gleefully furious Karen would be to see actual citizens reclaiming artistic ownership over a once-paved path? Lost in my imagination, I suddenly felt a sense of empowerment wash over me, sparkling even brighter than the distant seaside horizon. This wasn't just about a driveway anymore. It was about asserting my right to my home and standing against the values that sought to suffocate my joyful existence. My adventure was just beginning, and I could practically hear the soundtrack swelling to a crescendo. This was not just a battle. It was a full-blown revolution, Would my neighbors join in, or were they simply watching from the sidelines? Only time would tell, but I could already envision the audacity of reclaiming my driveway, one bright-colored sign at a time. Who was ready for a showdown? As I dramatically turned my thoughts back to my driveway's demise, a concrete expanse now entirely excavated. Images danced in my brain like a vibrant meme. I pictured myself sprawled across a velvet-like patch of grass in a wide-brimmed sun hat, waving myself with a piece of paper labeled "Driveway Abandonment Leaflet," while targeting every neighbor with my embellished tales of injustice. I'd conjured a neighborhood blockade featuring bright daisies and uncanny lawn gnomes, who would passionately join my cause to demand reparations. After all, it was only fair, wasn't it? I grinned at that thought, imagining Karen Whitmore sputtering like the clingy pop-up gallon of paint left by my side of the driveway. "You can't paint over the facts, Karen," I envisioned shouting. "For years I extended my lawn and brought vibrancy to this bland neighborhood while you unclench your superiority complex." Meanwhile, as ocean breezes tickled my hair, I realized I needed to prepare for my grand entrance, the tactical rebellion of a visionary. I dashed into my apartment, sending out a rallying cry through our neighborhood WhatsApp group. "Join the Reclaim Our Driveway movement. Bring snacks, bring signs, or at least bring that mulch schedule you planned for your vegetable garden. We're taking this stand like it's the finest summer barbecue." Judging by the fervent response from my neighbors, Denise, the candle maker with a penchant for extravagantly scented lavender, was bringing cupcakes. I could sense an uproar building. The HOA had no idea they had unleashed a torrent of delightful chaos, one I intended to ride like a clown in a parade. Devin arrived shortly after, tacos scented from his recent escapades in the underground taco shop that had become our neighborhood folklore, a revolutionary spot dubbed El Taceria. The man was devoted to more than comedic relief. He was equipped with an entire bag of DIY craft supplies he'd purchased on sale at the local art shop, ready to help our rally pop. Giving me a brief evaluation of the supplies, I reported back to our nefarious plans. "What do we need? Glitter bomb signs? Neon paint for the HOA as after my grass message? Or better yet, we could just spend a delightful afternoon crafting personal grievances into colorful displays of defiance." Though his nonchalant demeanor often made him seem relaxed, I knew he was equally passionate about the drive to reclaim my paver of concrete. As the day for our so-called driveway art installation approached, the anticipation was palpable. The group morphed into a diverse melting pot of paintbrushes, freshly baked snacks, and an unsettling amount of homemade lawn decorations proliferating at all corners of my backyard. As we gathered to prepare our protest, it felt like a scene from one of those viral home improvement shows, where grumpy neighbors of the past become unlikely allies against a common foe. I glanced at the makeshift banners, adorned with vibrant slogans like "Paved Perfection" and "Concrete Matters," and felt a rush of bravery surge through me. This wasn't just about art. This was a joyful celebration of our collective resistance against the petty authoritarianism headlining our OA. Just when I started picturing my lineup of enthusiastic yet feisty neighbors leading a karaoke rendition of "I Will Survive," complete with stunning choreography, our rallying moments were interrupted by none other than Karen herself, piercing the quagmire of righteous energy with the ire of a beige brick wall. She strutted onto the scene, perfectly coiffed and glaring at our colorful handiwork with the precision of a hawk eyeing its prey. "What is the meaning of this?" she barked, taking in the bold contrasts of paint and rebellion festooning my yard. Frustration crackled in the air like static electricity. "Are you protesting against the very guidelines you all signed?" With a heart thumping like a drum roll in the face of injustice, I stepped forward to confront her. "Oh, dear Karen, it's not about the guidelines. It's about celebrating freedom and expression that you seem tragically unable to grasp. The only thing abandoned here is your sense of humor. Look around. This is a community of individuals uniting." I gestured at my dynamic brigade of neighbors who nodded enthusiastically, brandishing their cleverly painted signs as if each were a battle flag. I felt the strength of collective laughter pulsating through us, reminding every single one of us that our charismatic vibrancy had been scolded long enough. As the wheels of rebellion began turning, I took advantage of the moment to gather my courage, invoking the universal truth of communities rising against the overlord of restrictions. This was not merely a confrontation, it was an exuberant declaration that we would not be swept under the rug nor bulldozed into oblivion by an overzealous HOA. The laughter bubbled around us as we challenged her with every glorious project Karen had ever stifled. Garden sculptures, elaborate flower beds, and yes, Even the instance of my lobelia bushes conspiring against the lawn's conformity. Perhaps we were up against the iron grip of HOA bureaucracy, but our shared resolve dodged their monolithic grays in favor of riotous color. As we faced off with our neighborhood Karen, armed with nothing but signs, laughter, and the beautiful spirit of defiance, a question danced on the edge of my tongue. Would we manage to capture our intrinsic essence while turning Karen's carefully pruned ideals into something gloriously ludicrous? The answer hung thick in the air, pregnant with possibilities. However, I could already envision a trailer for our impending Netflix special, Driveway Warriors, rebuilding the neighborhood one sign at a time. And this was just the beginning. What would happen next? Do I look like a mind reader, Karen? I began with my best faux innocence, long practiced in the thrilling arena of HOA skirmishes. Evidently, your vision lacks breadth, given you didn't see my driveway. You bulldozed it while I was out living life. And here I am, turning your monochrome dream into a colorful celebration of community spirit. I took a deep breath, the words erupting from me like the glorious confetti cannon I secretly wished would spontaneously ignite. Looking at Karen, her perfectly manicured fingers were clenched around her clipboard, the very epitome of discontent as her sun-kissed fake tan expressed its own concealed rage, setting the perfect dramatic tone to my showdown. Our neighbors rallied around me, raising their signs with triumphant gusto, as though they were lion-hearted gladiators of the community. Devon, ever the loyal comrade, decided to up the ante by shouting, "Yeah, take a look, Karen. You've got the zest of a wet towel about you and the charm of a potato. How do you sleep at night?" I stifled a laugh, not quite believing that my self-proclaimed chill neighbor could muster such fiery defiance against the titan of conformity. Karen's eyes bulged as we multiplied into a chorus of passion. Suddenly, her pristine authority felt far less formidable, subjected now to our rollicking joy and our hopes for a quirky protest that had morphed into a collective uprising. I could see Karen's veneer of control cracking like the pavement she loved so dearly. "Your levity is misplaced," she gasped, flustered, her voice a thin, wavering line of authority. "You've crossed the line, I'll have to notify the board." But of course, she had no idea what she was up against. I pushed a freshly painted sign reading, "Karen can't take the fun out of the sun," toward her, a delightful explosion of color that seemed to defy every ounce of her suffocating regulations. The laughter that erupted from our cacophony of neighbors clashed beautifully with her clipped proclamation of hostility. It struck me then, like clarity in the midst of chaos. We weren't just reclaiming a driveway. We were reclaiming our joy as a community. "Notify the board?" I responded, leaning in as if sharing the juiciest gossip. "If you can tear down my driveway, I will collect every witty quip you've ever muttered and parade them as my memoirs. Believe me, it'll be a bestseller." My heart raced with every word. Karen's usual confidence began to fray, her steadfast grip on the clipboard loosening as she stood frozen, clearly bewildered by the raw audacity unraveling before her. Somehow, though the laughter sparked up around us like the most brilliant fireworks display, I chose to draw strength from it as though the very ground beneath my feet had given way to exhilarating adrenaline. In this surreal whirlwind of community solidarity, I began to wonder if we were all realizing a truth. Laughter was far more powerful than punishments, more potent than any petty regulation. Each uproarious cheer from the crowd lifted my spirits higher. Neighbors I had only waved at were suddenly my closest allies in this ridiculous battle against suffocating decorum. Glancing around, I pointed at Denise, who was energetically dancing in front of her absurdly decorated cupcake tower, and exhaled, "See, this is what the true spirit of our neighborhood should feel like. Not haunted by the specter of pristine regulations, but bursting with creativity and companionship." The enthusiastic nods and cheers were thunderous. Devon nudged me, a glint of mischief lighting up his face. "What if we hold a driveway revival show? You know, a talent show meets construction site masterpiece event?" Delighted, I turned to face Karen once more. "What do you think, Karen? A lyrical ode to driveway liberation? We can all compete for the title of most absurdly reflective driveway decorator or best use of glitter." I burst into laughter at the sheer ridiculousness of it all, and the atmosphere morphed into something blissful. Karen remained stone-faced, but I saw a flicker of confusion behind her beige exterior. Meanwhile, our neighbors applauded and roared with laughter. Each absurd idea interspersed with wild creative visions created a collective vision of artistic rebellion, purposed more toward joy than capitalism. Would she dare stifle laughter now? At that moment, as she stood dumbfounded amid our colorful display of community theater, I felt a rush of determination. My struggle was no longer just about a stupid driveway. It had transformed into a rebellion against conformity. You know what, Karen? Maybe you need a sprinkle of creativity in your life. What say we designate a fun day? The crowd erupted into wild cheers. A burst of defiance gracefully wrapped around us, while I felt empowered by the spirit of unity. I promised myself that if we survived this HOA showdown, I would mark our triumph with a grand garden project glittered with whimsical characters, perhaps even a flamingo or two. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I could see everything around me. Laughter, camaraderie, and pure, unfiltered joy, a powerful antidote to the overbearing HOA reign. And perhaps, just perhaps, I was shaking the foundations of that beige, cookie-cutter power. As I locked eyes with Karen, her bewildered visage slowly contorted into a dubious frown. I couldn't help but ask myself, had we finally started the revolution against the backyard oppressors? What wild transformations awaited us next? I felt a surge of excitement ripple through the crowd as they bounced with infectious energy, united against the undying threat of Karen's disapproval. Signs waved like flags of rebellion, and a spirited chant began to form. Reclaim the driveway, reclaim the joy. Echoing off the bland exteriors of beige houses that had flourished under Karen's relentless regime, it felt like the stirring sound of pot lids clanging together. Smoky, boisterous, and delightfully unrefined. I couldn't help but marvel at our united front. It was a spectacle worthy of a Broadway revival, complete with a show-stopping number that celebrated our neighborhood's eccentricity. What had started as a hobble through HOA red tape had transformed into a full-blown carnival of creativity where DIY spirit ruled, and the greatest crime was having too much fun. Karen, for her part, seemed entrapped in some kind of bureaucratic purgatory where the rules of decorum dictated her every move. Each time I glanced over, her face morphed through a series of comedic reactions that read like a slapstick montage: shock, indignation, and a hint of begrudging curiosity. At her side, her clipboard trembled in her grasp like a leaf caught in an autumn breeze, the weight of our collective joy pitching her already fragile authority into chaos. "I can't believe this. What have you done?" she wheezed, face ashen and eyes wide. "You've turned a minor violation into a full-on spectacle." I caught myself stifling a laugh. Karen's bewilderment was precisely the entertainment I didn't know I needed. It was at that moment I realized how voraciously I had underestimated the power of community spirit. Like a wildfire that ignites the dry, wistful July grass, the sheer enthusiasm of my neighbors had kindled something deeply rebellious within me. Devin, standing beside me, was already brainstorming plans for a driveway shindig. "What if we incorporate an ice cream truck and some funky music? We could really make the HOA squirm." His eyes sparkled, and I knew he was totally in this with me. Not just for myself and my pitiful abandoned driveway, but for the world where every flower would bloom to its fullest potency. I imagined a giant mural on my driveway, depicting the wild animals, squirrels doing parkour, raccoons with sunglasses, everything we'd been told was too eclectic coming to life. How majestic to defy the realm of strict drabness with every colorful stroke. As the dreamscape of our driveway transformation danced in my head, I looked around and saw new light bulbs flickering in the eyes of the neighbors. Denise swayed like a sun-kissed flower as she held her cupcake tower aloft, a bizarre but endearing monument to our revolt. "When life gives you lemons, you make a freaking lemon meringue pie and throw a block party," she proclaimed, her passion trickling like melted icing from an overstuffed pastry. The crowd erupted with laughter, a joyous confirmation that we were indeed alive, and by golly, alive by our own rules. And in that shared absurdity, Karen's austere visage transformed into that of an unwitting nemesis, unwelcome yet oddly entertaining, a character lending flavor to our splendid comedy. It was then I thought, maybe I could help Karen shed her chains, breaking her out of the inferno of do's and don'ts. What if she had a fun day, too? Perhaps a day filled with polka dots and oversized hats, a magical break from the mind-numbing world of compliance? I decided to pitch my revolutionary idea of a Karen carnival to the gathering. People caught on quickly, shouting suggestions about riding in chairs and gleeful face-painting booths. All I could envision was Karen, tightly wound, sporting a clown nose like a whirling dervish while screaming with laughter. Can you imagine? All tightly wound, yet rocking out to a ukulele playoff with the local kids. It was a beautiful thought, and my comrades seemed to fall in love with the prospect, wooed by the hilarity of Karen unable to resist joining the fray. Yet, as Karen stood there, mortified and muttering about decorum, I suddenly wondered if this spectacle could be a movement, a magical renaissance of sorts where neighbors shed their enmity for mere compliance and embraced the unrestrained warmth of shared humanity. We danced and sang and schemed together, a collective thrum of ingenious banter blossoming into something sublime. And peeking into Karen's flustered demeanor, I envisioned the very real possibility of change, not just for myself, but for all of us who found joy stifled under the weight of unreasonable restrictions. Our laughter rippled through the cul-de-sac, drawing the attention of curious onlookers, as if announcing the arrival of a new era, the era of homeowners who enjoy living in their homes. But every saga has its critical moment, doesn't it? Would Karen get back onto her clipboard, clutching high horse, or would she surrender to the exuberance of creativity before her? Would our laughter poke enough cracks in the icy facade of her authority? "So, Karen," I said, with a playful grin, "what's it going to be? Join us and embrace the joy, or stick to your Bayesian complaints?" My heart raced in anticipation, the pulse of possibility thumping like a drum in the celebratory chaos around us. Surely it was the beginning of a riotous game that we had all unknowingly signed up for. Would the tides turn from a storm of pristine regulations to a sunbeam of playful exuberance? The air was thick with anticipation, and I could practically hear the gears in Karen's overcaffeinated mind as they screeched to a halt and started to shift perceptibly. A moment ago, she was the defending champion of the global bureaucratic tug-of-war, but now the tide had turned, and she found herself standing on a precarious cliff of possibility. As she fidgeted with her clipboard like it held the secrets to the universe, I seized the moment. "Think of it, Karen! A Karen carnival! Just picturing the delight in the faces of our neighbors when they see you, our own neighborhood general, hopping around in oversized shoes, makes me giggle." The crowd erupted in a crescendo of applause and laughter, echoing my enthusiasm, emboldening her to embrace our mad scheme. The rich irony of this moment, a staid HOA president being petitioned to run in clown shoes whilst perched on the edge of absurdity, was delicious, and I couldn't help but relish it. I continued to egg her on, my voice dripping with playful sarcasm. I mean, who wouldn't want to join in on a game that rivals the intensity of competitive crochet? Just imagine the thrill of the potato sack race. And don't forget the face painting. You could be the Picasso of polka dots. The gathered neighbors howled with laughter, chortling as they visualized our stern HOA villain turning into a face-painted festival guru, trading in her business casual for a silly hat and a wide grin. Even the kids were chanting, "Karen kicks," with a chorus of giggles following. Devon smirked at me, nudging my side as if to say, "Are you actually planting that wild seed into the mind of the frowning fortress?" But deep down inside, I could sense that sowing chaos was precisely the sort of adventure that I had been dreaming of, and perhaps, just perhaps, it could coax out the creative spirit imprisoned within Karen's tightly wound existence. Just then, a megaphone materialized from nowhere, held in the hands of none other than Calvin, our esteemed 30-something neighborhood DJ turned stand-up comedian. His voice blared out, punctuated with echoes of enthusiasm. "Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that today is the day to take back not just Alex's driveway, but the entire suburban landscape?" There it was, a rallying call that sent shockwaves through the crowd, invigorating their spirits more than carbo loading before a marathon. My cheeks ached from grinning ear to ear while the bystanders' faces lit up with revolutionary zeal. Calvin's spontaneous hype session unveiled new hopes, igniting conversations about art fairs, block parties, and even a neighborhood book swap meet. Joy was marching in boldly, like an unexpected summer rain shower, and Karen was standing at the center of it all, undoubtedly drenched in the absurdity threatening to tumble her way. Despite her apparent horror, Karen's lips quirked. An almost imperceptible glimmer flickered in her eyes, doing cartwheels of disbelief around the horror of pastel wigs and inflatable toothy clowns. Rarely did one see that vulnerable patch of humanity beneath her army of rule-driven armor. I don't think turning our neighborhood into an amusement park is acceptable," she mysteriously gasped out, attempting to reclaim her authoritative ground, but her tone lacked the strength it used to hold. Instead, it was as if she were slipping on that cartoon banana peel of acceptance, the one that invites vibrancy in where only gray once established its rule. Perhaps everyone had grown tired of beige, and oddly enough, she was not immune to the charms of cadmium yellow and teal. "But a little fun surely doesn't hurt," she continued, her natural instinct to hedge with caution now intermingled with a flicker of curiosity. The crowd eagerly leaned in, like children poised for a bedtime story. A palpable shift had begun, as the walls Karen had so carefully erected around her began to crumble, revealing a swirling vortex of whimsy beneath. I took a deep breath as the air became electric with the prospect of her bending toward our cause. Karen, not all of us want bare green lawns and strict sticking to the script. When did we all agree on such a monochrome existence? Life is too short for flavorless yard decor that's one shade away from funeral drapery. I waved my arms through the air emphatically, my enthusiasm rippling across the crowd. Suddenly, the laughter became more intense, more liberating, as the laughter morphed into wild applause, the discontent festering among neighbors turning into thrilling camaraderie. If we could break through the fortress of Karen's bewildering authority, what else would be possible? Perhaps we would uproot the tedious culture that had plagued us too long, fertilizing it with our unique quirks and comedic rebellion. Mrs. Whitmore's lip twitched, as if resisting an inner urge to transform that authoritative posture into something far less rigid. Perhaps we had struck a nerve, perhaps we had flicked a switch. As escape plans swirled around us, I made one last playful jab. What do you say, Karen? Shall we deliver a speck of sparkle into the stringent realm of our HOA? It's about time we brought a parade of color to this beige battleground. I fully expected her to retreat, to grasp her clipboard, and march away into a fortress of mandates unyielding to merriment. Instead, a rumbly, half-hearted chuckle emanated from her lips. She pressed her fingertips against the clipboard tighter, almost as if this act was her last bastion against surrendering to the infectious vibrance enveloping her. But I could see it, the way her eyes softened, the way the outlines of her features momentarily danced between apprehension and bewilderment. "Ladies and gentlemen," she finally declared, albeit a touch more tentatively, "if you really must, then let's proceed with this. Carnival." A cheer erupted around us, the noise breaking like waves against the stern cliffs of her previous dismissal. It felt transitory, electric, the stamp of a new chapter written right beneath our feet in gloriously unyielding sidewalk chalk. Whether it would evolve into a metamorphosis of community or slip back into mere surface-level compliance remained to be seen. But in that moment, we all believed in cultivating an eclectic home for ourselves, wherever that unfolded. I looked around at all my fellow dreamers, allies, and mischief makers, excitedly high-fiving Devon, as if we were conquering warriors celebrating victory over the forces of logistical despair. Our shared laughter crescendoed, ringing out boldly like a resounding declaration that joy had finally returned. So, what would our newly painted driveway reveal next? I could hardly believe it. Karen Whitmore, our very own neighborhood Scrooge, had acquiesced to my whimsical carnival proposal. The air around us crackled with glee, as the crowd erupted into cheers that could have likely shattered the glass windows of the nearby quaint coffee shop, a societal sanctuary for all things caffeinated and snooty. I stood there, reeling with excitement. My thoughts raced like children on a sugar high, envisioning the myriad pastel balloons, bright banners, and the overall glorious insanity of neighbors dressed in polka-dotted clown costumes, wielding oversized foam fingers while shouting, "Maybe this'll help our sodas fizz." The carnival would be our moment to bask in audacious delight, a canvas on which we could paint the absurdity of suburbanity with a brush dipped deep into the colors of joy and hilarity. Devon couldn't help but join in the enthusiasm, grabbing a random megaphone perched beneath some stray festival decoration remnants. "Wait, hold the phone," he yelled, his voice booming through the neighborhood as he elbowed me out of the way to claim the spotlight. "Are we really going to transform our meticulously groomed but dreadfully monotonous neighborhood into a vibrant circus? Count me in." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and even a few chuckles escaped from Karen, the mighty queen of chainmail HOA mandates, who seemed almost human in this moment. Suddenly, the entire assembly was swept up in the infectious charm of spontaneity, imagining the surreal hilarity of neighborhood games like Find the Lawn Flamingo or Who Can Balance the Most Garden Gnomes on Their Head. It took mere minutes for us to morph into a frenzied committee of festive mischief, wielding clipboards of our own, eager to gather ideas and volunteers, as if we were channeling flavored mightiness. "I think we should get a dunk tank," one 10-year-old shouted, clutching a lemonade stand like it was held together by dreams and magic. "And we need cotton candy," another chimed in, "but make it blue for the aesthetics." As laughter buzzed around us, the absurdity of what I had birthed made my heart soar. Here we were, a ragtag team uniting not only to reclaim my driveway, but to turn our rigorous existence into a thrilling spectacle of merriment. We were embarking on a quest whose endpoint gleamed with possibility, a beacon of excess happiness and unity shining through the mundane suburban haze. The vibe shifted when I caught Karen leaning against a lamppost, observing the brewing carnival chaos. After that initial chuckle, she had retreated into an ocean of contemplation, her amusement faltering as the wheels in her head began to turn. Did she really just endorse this circus? As I meandered over to her gravity-defying post, I decided to seize the moment. Karen, look at everyone rallying together. This could be a fabulous way to shake off those pesky regulations. We can bond through the magic of flowery, bouncy houses and over-the-top face painting. I offered a grin. It was impossible to miss the twinkle of disbelief dancing in her piercing eyes. This was not the Ice Queen I had come to know. Instead, I was confronting a woman on the precipice of exploring a world beyond rigid HOA edicts, ready to sprinkle some confetti-filled mischief into her life. Alex, she interjected cautiously, one day of frivolity doesn't erase the strict adherence to rules that the community expects. Oh, here we go. A lecture on the valor of traditionalist governance, right as we embark on a journey to color our world like a pack of rabid kindergartners. I chuckled inwardly as I adjusted my floral sundress. Oh, Karen, it's not a matter of erasing the rules. It's about expanding our palette. Why can't we celebrate where we kitchen sinked our way to boredom instead of just erasing it? The competition bliss HOA was. I could see the internal conflict unfolding in her expression, like a bird trying to decide between the safety of its nest or the wild unknown of a far-off tree filled with delicious berries. As the festival began to take shape, the buzz of excitement morphed into a kind of euphoric mania that left us all feeling buoyant. Devin and I set up booths, collecting volunteers like we were starved for human interaction and armed with little more than brightly colored markers and snacks. Let's make sure there's a booth where everyone can guess how many tiny decorative frogs you can fit in a jar, I yelled, half interpretable as a suggestion and half a pledge to madness that hopefully would ease my anxiety over the entire logistics of this oddly thrilling carnival takeover. And lo and behold, my fellow neighbors dug their heels in deeper, enthusiastically agreeing to take on any whims I dared dream up. The day was upon us, vibrant banners fluttering in the summer breeze, children dashing off to chase cotton candy dreams, adults regaled with beach ball jousting. It felt like the whole neighborhood erupted into joyous chaos, flavors drenching every corner. My driveway glimmered beneath a constellation of colorful decorations, standing like a defiant monument of reclaimed joy in a world that once worshipped beige. With Karen sporting her own makeshift smile and even a colorful apron speckled with confetti, I couldn't help but break into laughter, thinking back to how we had arrived at this surreal juncture. I paused momentarily to wonder, had we become this unlikely brigade of revelers, marching in against the gray menace of suburban oppression? As I secretly indulged in the delicious irony of our victory, I couldn't help but revel in the hilarity of the whole absurd scene around me. My driveway had indeed become the epicenter of our spontaneous and outrageous crusade. Fate, with its brilliant comedic timing, had somehow helped turn my politically charged appeal into a festival of laughter. Yes, indeed. My concrete slab had become the backdrop for triumph, delighting us all in ways we never could have imagined.